Mayor Pete Buttigieg claimed Friday that Christianity had its own extremist factions of faith similar to that of radical Islam in the Middle East. Asked about the differences between Shia extremism followed in Iran versus Sunni extremism, the 2020 presidential candidate immediately compared radical Islam to Christianity. "Well, not unlike Christianity when it is motivating someone to do something extreme. It can have 1,000 different flavors," he said. "The real question is what's going on with the regime, the government, that's given the power and the apparatus of the state and intelligence service and a military, and what do they do with their ideology?" Buttigieg commented on Christianity and Islam during an interview with radio host Hugh Hewitt. The South Bend mayor also compared the radical Iran regime to President Donald Trump's administration, insofar as whether they were representative of the entire population. Iran, the Iranian regime does not speak for all of the Iranian people as a unit any more than, you could say that there are no moderate politicians in the US, and we're all secretly enthusiastic Trump supporters," he said. "It just doesn't work that way." Buttigieg lamented that the moderate Iran factions that wanted to work with the West and the United States were burned by Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. "Imagine if you're an Iranian politician who put all your eggs in the basket of saying let's make a deal with the Americans, now you're going to have a lot of egg on your face," he said. Trump, he argued, was only empowering Iranian hardliners by allowing the United States to side with Saudi Arabia and putting more economic and political pressure on Iran. Left-wing activist Emily Ratajkowski is making an anti-science argument to justify the murder of unborn black children as a means to lower the prison population. And I use the term anti-science because Ratajkowski's racist appeal to decrease the black prison population as some kind of public service is purely driven by a sense of supremacism and has nothing to do with facts or statistics. Here she is in her own words, and I dare you to differentiate this from anything you would read at the Daily Stormer or one of those white genocide sites. Emphasis added, "This week, 25-year-old white men voted to ban abortion in Alabama even in cases of incest and rape. These men in power are imposing their wills onto the bodies of women in order to uphold the patriarchy and perpetuate the industrial prison complex by presenting women of low-income opportunity the right to choose not to reproduce. The states trying to ban abortions have the highest proportions of black women living there. This is about class and race and is a direct attack on the fundamental human rights women in the U.S. deserve and are protected by under Roe v. Wade. Our bodies, our choice." That's her full statement, but it's the opening, the emphasized part, I want to focus on. Without even attempting to conceal or shade or nuance it, Ratajkowski comes right out and says we need to kill unborn black children before they grow up to become black criminals. What you have here is a white racist making a eugenics argument cloaked in social justice niceties. We'll get to the facts and statistics in a moment, but this must first be made clear. Emily Ratajkowski's argument, her rationale is no different from what we have heard throughout the darkest parts of human history from the KKK, Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger's hideous sentiments about Black Americans, or from the Nazis about any non-Aryan race. Before we get to the math that exposes Ratajkowski as the godless supremacist she is, and just a moment let's assume her thinking is correct that, in the coldest and most clinical terms, her beliefs make sense. Even so, in order to agree with her, you still have to strip every bit of humanity from a monstrous idea comfortable with the murder of children, based solely on their skin color, for crimes they have not yet committed. And even Ratajkowski knows that not every black child murdered in the womb is destined to grow up to be criminal, but she is still willing to exterminate, to sacrifice innocent black life as a means to stop the others. But it's the math that exposes Ratajkowski. The math is damning. According to the most recent statistics I could find, and I am using Alabama as my example because it just passed the most progressive pro-life laws and just happens to have the highest proportional number of its citizens in prisons, there are some 45,000 Alabama citizens in federal, state, and local prisons. A majority of those prisoners, 54%, are black. That means that roughly 25,000 black Alabamans are in prison. Last year, roughly 4,200 black babies were aborted in Alabama, and if you look at the numbers going back to 2006, it seems safe to calculate that over the last 10 years, some 50,000 black babies have been aborted in Alabama. The question, then, is this: did the legal murder of 50,000 black unborn children decrease the prison population? According to the U.S. Census, for every 100,000 black citizens in Alabama, 1,788 end up in prison, which means that of those 50,000 murdered black children, about 2,500 would end up in prison. What this means is that in order to spare Alabama an additional 2,500 prisoners over 10 years, or only 250 a year, Emily Ratajkowski thinks it's a good idea to literally exterminate the other 47,500 innocent black children. Emily Ratajkowski believes it is noble and woke to murder 100% of unborn black children because 5% might end up in prison. Emily Ratajkowski is defending the murder of roughly 5,000 black babies per year because 250 might end up in prison. It gets worse. Since 2006, roughly 100,000 innocent babies of all races have been legally murdered in the state of Alabama alone, and although black women represent about 14% of the Alabama population, they accounted for nearly 62% the abortions in 2017. So back of the napkin math tells us that roughly 60,000 black babies have been murdered in one state since 2006. But how many of those 60,000 would have ended up facing the death penalty Ratajkowski wants them sentenced to even before they are born? Well, since 2006, fewer than 35 black people have been moved to death row in Alabama, and only a dozen have been executed. We're killing 60,000 over the 0.1% that might end up on death row? Sorry, that's not an argument, that's a genocide. All that human potential literally butchered, literally ripped into pieces, literally sucked through a vacuum tube, literally tossed in the garbage. What if just one of those black babies had grown up to cure cancer? That would serve us right. Former President Barack Obama may not be ready to support any particular 2020 Democrat presidential candidate for the primaries, but he is already preparing for the eventual nominee by launching a unity fund to help in the general election. Obama announced the launch of his Democratic Unity Fund on Friday in an email to Democrat donors, Fox News reported. The Democratic Unity Fund is a promise that whoever earns our nomination, he or she will have a strong, united, and well-organized DNC ready to spring into action the moment the general election starts, a DNC that's ready to lift us all to victory in November, the announcement read. With this look toward the day when the Democrat primaries are over, Obama has further distanced himself from coming to the support of any of the 24 Democrats vying for the party's nomination, including his own Vice President, Joe Biden. On April 25, Biden spokesperson Kate Bedingfield insisted on MSNBC that the former VP requested that Obama not endorse him ahead of the 2020 primaries. The vice president actually asked the president not to endorse. Biden wanted to make the case directly to the voters, she claimed. Breitbart News has exclusively obtained a heretofore unreported on police report from days before the 2016 presidential election that describes how a cocaine pipe that authorities determined was used to smoke cocaine was found in a rental car returned to an Arizona Hertz location in the middle of the night. Also found in the vehicle were several personal effects of Hunter Biden, then Vice President Joe Biden's son, like 2 of his D.C. driver's licenses, multiple credit cards, and personally identifying information like a Delaware Attorney General badge and the U.S. Secret Service business card that police said bore his name. Hunter Biden, according to the police report, had rented the vehicle from a location in California with the intent to return it to the Prescott, Arizona, location, where it was discovered the morning after it was dropped off with the drug paraphernalia and Hunter Biden's personal effects inside. Instead of returning the car keys to the drop box where after-hours returns are supposed to go, the car was returned, according to the police report, with the keys left in the gas tank compartment of the vehicle. Also found inside the vehicle, per the police report, were 2 driver's licenses both bearing Hunter Biden's legal name Robert Biden, as well as some credit cards with the same name, a Secret Service business card, and an Attorney General's badge, all contained inside a wallet that Hertz rental employees discovered, along with a pipe that Hertz employees thought and police later confirmed was used to smoke illicit drugs, as well as a white powdery substance in the armrest of the vehicle. The next morning, according to the police report, a man who identified himself as Joseph McGee called the Hertz rental car counter to inform them of how the keys to the car were left in the vehicle's gas cap rather than in the normal spot. McGee informed the rental car company employee, according to police, that his friend was feeling sick so they didn't know what to do when the car was returned. Police, according to a supplemental report filed by a Prescott Police Department detective, sought and obtained a subpoena to discover the source of the Joseph McGee phone call, and traced it to a phone number owned and operated by a renowned colon hydrotherapist in the region. Police attempted to find and interview Joseph McGee, but were unable to, and they also, per the documents, attempted to call Hunter Biden himself from the phone numbers he provided to the rental car company. Prescott Police Department officials were unable to reach Hunter Biden during the investigation for an interview on the matter, though, according to the documents, they did attempt to call him. One of the Prescott Police Department officers who responded to the initial scene wrote that according to his sergeant, described in the report as Sergeant Small, the Secret Service had informed the local police that Robert Biden had been located by the Secret Service and was well. Laboratory analysis by the Arizona Department of Public Safety later determined that the pipe discovered in the vehicle was used to smoke cocaine, not meth, but fingerprints were not found on the device. The 23 pages of law enforcement and police documents repeatedly refer to the suspect under investigation as Robert Hunter Biden and the report type as a narcotics offense. Breitbart News is publishing the documents here, with redactions made to remove personally identifying contact information like addresses and phone numbers as well as the last names of key witnesses. Two different Prescott Police Department officers as well as a detective conducted an investigation, but ultimately local authorities in both the city and county attorney's offices declined to prosecute the case. A document shows the reason the county attorney declined to prosecute the vice president's son is because they thought they would only be able to get minor charges to stick, and kicked it down to the city attorney. It is unclear from the documents why the city attorney declined to prosecute. In addition to local police, FBI and the U.S. Secret Service agents were roped into the case, as well. The FBI dispatched agents to the scene, according to the law enforcement documents, and the Secret Service communicated with the various law enforcement officials investigating and confirmed that Hunter Biden was not in harm's way. As his father launches yet another bid for the presidency, Hunter Biden has emerged as a major scandal-prone problem for the former vice president and leading Democrat candidate for the 2020 nomination. Hunter Biden's position at Ukrainian natural gas company Burisma Holdings has come under scrutiny in the wake of his father's push as vice president to pressure the Ukrainian government to terminate a governmental investigator, Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, who was investigating Burisma Holdings. His firm also received a $1 billion private equity investment from the Chinese Communist government after he and his father traveled to Beijing toward the end of Barack Obama's presidency. And while Hunter Biden's alleged corruption connections with his father's official government actions remain the central focus of deep dive reporting on the Bidens, the former vice president's son has been problematic for the 2020 frontrunner in many more ways too. Back in 2014, Hunter Biden was discharged dishonorably from the Navy after failing a drug test that his commander said he should have known was coming. On Friday's broadcast of HBO's Real Time, author Fran Lebowitz said that President Trump deserves to be turned over to the same Saudis who got rid of that reporter. Maybe they could do the same for him. Lebowitz later apologized for the remarks. Lebowitz said, "Impeachment would be just the beginning of what he deserves." She added, "Whenever I think about this and what he really deserves, I think we should turn him over to the Saudis, his buddies. The same Saudis who got rid of that reporter. Maybe they could do the same for him." Later, during the overtime segment, Lebowitz said, "I didn't realize that I said it, I regret saying it." She added, "I did not mean that, and I regret saying it. I regret that everyone misinterpreted it. They misinterpret everything. Why should they stop with me?